In the shadows of the Athenian Riviera, where opulence often masks danger, the line between a charmed life and a tragic end can vanish in a single heartbeat. By late 2018, John Macris, known locally as the Australian, seemed to have successfully outrun the ghosts of his past. He had traded the gritty streets of Sydney for a hillside villa in Voula, one of Greece's most exclusive enclaves. To the outside observer, he was a legitimate businessman, a doting father, and the husband of a celebrity model. But beneath the surface of this Mediterranean idol, tension was quietly building. He had reportedly increased his personal protection in the weeks leading up to Halloween, perhaps sensing that old debts were finally coming due. On the evening of October 31, 2018, the atmosphere around the Macris residence was heavy, with an unspoken threat. John was preparing to attend a launch event for his new venture, a security firm ironically named My Services, which operated under the motto, "We believe in keeping you safe." The cruelty of fate would soon turn those words into a grim epitaph. Inside the villa's garage sat a powerful Lamborghini, a symbol of his status, and a vehicle that offered speed and protection. Yet for reasons that remain a subject of debate, John chose not to use the secure exit. Instead, he walked out the courtyard door and stepped into a small, unassuming smart car, parked on the street. Typically, a security detail would be stationed in a glass booth overlooking the road, acting as a first line of defense. However, on this specific night, the post was effectively unmanned, leaving John exposed in the one moment he was most vulnerable. As he settled into the driver's seat, the clock struck 8:10 p.m. The surveillance cameras, silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, captured a lone figure emerging from the darkness. Clad in obscure clothing with a cap pulled low, the individual moved with the cold precision of a professional. The silence of the affluent neighborhood was shattered as the assailant approached the passenger window. 6 projectiles were discharged in rapid succession. 4 of them found their mark, striking John in the upper body. Despite the severity of the impact, John's survival instinct kicked in. He managed to force the car door open, scrambling onto the pavement in a desperate bid to escape the ambush. But the attacker was relentless. Witnesses later recounted hearing a chilling declaration from the shadows that promised to conclude the task before the final fatal actions were taken. The figure then melted back into the night, leaving behind a scene of absolute devastation. Miles away, the tragedy took on a surreal duality. John's wife, Victoria Karida, was in the midst of the spotlight, walking the runway at Athens' exclusive Designers Week, completely unaware that her world had just fractured. Back at the villa, the first person to confront the heartbreaking reality was John's 82-year-old father, Stelios. He had been inside when his son left, only to rush out moments later to find him lying on the ground. Neighbors, alerted by the noise, peered from their balconies, paralyzed by fear, while one brave resident stepped out to witness the aftermath. The police arrived to find 6 casings and a shattered family, marking the beginning of a mystery that would stretch across continents. To understand the trajectory that led to that dark street in Athens, we must rewind the tape to the sun-drenched suburbs of Sydney, Australia. Born in 1972, John Macris was not a product of desperation or poverty. He was raised in the affluent northern districts, a world of privilege and opportunity that stands in stark contrast to the path he ultimately chose. By all accounts, he could have been anything, yet the magnetic pull of the underworld proved too strong to resist. He was drawn into the orbit of what local media often calls the Golden Mile, quickly establishing himself as a formidable player in a high-stakes game of power and influence. In the late 2000s, John solidified his reputation in the glittering, chaotic world of Sydney's nightlife. He formed a strategic alliance with Todd O'Connor, a well-known figure in the city's shadow economy. Together, they operated the Good Bar on Oxford Street, a venue that became a hub for the city's social elite and, reportedly, other, less public transactions. But the volatility of this lifestyle was undeniable. When O'Connor met a sudden, tragic end in 2008, it served as a grim foreshadowing of the perils inherent in their line of work. Yet, rather than retreating, John seemed to double down, eyeing the notorious King's Cross District, a neon-lit playground, known as much for its vice as its entertainment. However, John's resume extended far beyond managing guest lists and VIP booths. His ambition entangled him in serious legal complications. In 2005, the law caught up with him when authorities executed a raid on his Surrey Hills apartment. Inside a decorative Versace tin, investigators discovered a significant quantity of illicit substances. The findings were severe enough to warrant a conviction for supplying a commercial quantity of narcotics and handling stolen goods, resulting in a prison sentence of 2 years and 3 months. This period of incarceration was a pause, but not a stop, to his activities. The Macris name frequently appeared in police files, and not just because of John. The family dynamic was complex and fraught with legal entanglements. In 2011, his father, Stelios, found himself in the center of a major investigation after being apprehended with 50 kilograms of amphetamine oil raw material capable of producing an astronomical amount of product. The seizure, involving a station wagon and a Central Coast property, led to a staggering $2.1 million bail. However, in a twist fit for a courtroom drama, Stelios was acquitted 3 years later. It was John's brother Alex who stepped forward, admitting that he had deceived their father into transporting the contraband without his knowledge. Alex provided incriminating evidence against himself, securing immunity from prosecution while clearing his father's name. Despite the criminal record, John maintained a high social profile, becoming a minor celebrity through his relationship with PR maven Roxy Jasenko. But it was his association with another prominent clan, the Ibrahim family, that would ultimately define his legacy in Sydney. Initially, John and the Ibrahims were allies, coexisting as powerful stakeholders in the King's Cross nightclub scene. They were business partners with a shared vision. But around 2007, the foundation of this alliance began to crack. While the precise cause of the rift remains obscured by the code of silence that governs their world, rumors swirled regarding disputes over territory, financial control, and conflicting ambitions. What started as a partnership dissolved into a bitter feud, setting the stage for a series of retaliatory events that would echo all the way to Greece. If the relationship between the two factions was strained in 2007, by June 2009, it had shattered into open conflict. The tension reached its boiling point in an event that shocked Sydney's underworld. Fadi Ibrahim, the younger brother of the prominent nightclub boss, was sitting in his high-performance vehicle outside his home in Castle Cove when he was subjected to a severe targeted attack. He sustained 5 wounds in the ambush, leaving him fighting for his life in a coma, while his partner Shida was also injured during the chaos. As investigators scrambled for answers, the immediate question on the streets was not just how it happened, but who had sanctioned such a bold move. Suspicion from the Ibrahim camp almost immediately fell upon John Macris. This theory was fueled by a violent altercation that had occurred just 2 weeks prior at the trendy Ivy nightclub. Witnesses reported that Fadi had knocked John's brother Alex to the ground during a heated confrontation. To many, the subsequent attack on Fadi looked like a calculated response to that public humiliation. The desire for retribution was swift. Authorities alleged that Michael Ibrahim, who was incarcerated at the time, began orchestrating a countermove from behind bars. Using smuggled communication devices and a complex system of codes, he reportedly enlisted an associate, Rodney Goldie Atkinson, to settle the score. Fearing an imminent escalation, police executed a raid on Atkinson's residence in September 2009. What they found painted a chilling picture of intent. The inventory of seized items included a .22 caliber device in the kitchen, a .45 caliber stored in the bedroom, a protective ballistic vest, and a silencer-equipped rifle. Most damning, however, were surveillance photographs of John Macris and his license plate numbers, alongside a stolen police badge. It seemed to be a toolkit for a professional hit. Yet in court, Atkinson offered a different narrative. He claimed his intent was merely to intercept Macris to relieve him of his illicit cash and assets, not to end his life. Because the conspirators had spoken in riddles and codes, the prosecution struggled to prove a definitive intent to commit a fatal act. Consequently, in 2013 both men were acquitted of the conspiracy charges, although Atkinson received a lengthy sentence for the weaponry found in his possession. Realizing that the temperature in Sydney had become dangerously high, John made the strategic decision to exit the stage. Around 2012, he relocated permanently to Greece, effectively exiling himself to the land of his heritage. In Athens, he was no longer just John. He became known as Australos the Australian. This move was an attempt at a total reinvention. He sought to scrub the stain of the underworld from his reputation and build a legacy of legitimacy. His transformation seemed complete in 2016 when he married Victoria Karida, a striking Greek-Ukrainian model and television personality. Their nuptials on the island of Mykonos were a lavish affair, splashed across the pages of Greek tabloids, signaling John's arrival into high society. Victoria, a former playmate and reality TV contestant, brought a level of glamour that distracted from John's gritty history. Together, they projected the image of a power couple. John channeled his energy into My Services, his new security and facility management company. Catering to VIPs and the wealthy elite, the business offered everything from bodyguards to cleaning crews. Yet despite the polished exterior and the move toward legitimate enterprise, whispers persisted about the true source of the capital fueling his rise. He had built a fortress in paradise, but as the events of 2018 would prove, distance alone is not enough to outrun a past that demands to be reckoned with. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, investigators were faced with a labyrinth of possibilities. Given John's turbulent history and his known friction with powerful Sydney factions, early theories naturally drifted toward a retaliatory strike from his past. Was this the final move in the long-standing feud? Despite the compelling narrative, authorities found no concrete evidence linking the Sydney rivalries to the events in Vula. The focus then shifted to the possibility of a localized dispute, perhaps a drug transaction gone wrong within the European network. But for months, the case seemed destined to go cold, until a mundane piece of paper provided the breakthrough detectives needed. On April 2, 2019, the investigation took a dramatic turn. Police in the Glyfada district apprehended Yulianov Serafim, a Bulgarian national, outside a hotel. He was carrying forged identification documents, sparking suspicion that he had returned to Greece to fulfill another contract. While the motive remained opaque, the physical evidence began to align perfectly. Investigators discovered a receipt from a clothing store that corresponded precisely to the attire worn by the gunman in the grainy CCTV footage. This crucial Aurora digital footprint, left by a professional, unraveled the conspiracy. Further inquiries revealed that Yulianov and his brother Milan had entered the country weeks prior to the attack, tracking John's movements and renting vehicles under their own names, a detail that later baffled defense attorneys. The trial, which commenced in July 2020, was nothing short of cinematic. The courtroom became the stage for a tense confrontation between the grieving family and the accused. The prosecution laid out a damning timeline: the brothers' arrival, their surveillance of the villa, and their hasty departure from Greece the very day after the incident. While the defense argued that the men were merely tourists caught in a coincidence, claiming that true professionals would never leave such a clumsy paper trail. The visual evidence was overwhelming. In an emotional climax, John's widow, Victoria, stood before the court and identified Yulianov as the figure from the footage, pointing to his distinctive physical traits. The initial verdict delivered a semblance of justice. Yulianov was found responsible for the fatal act and sentenced to 18 years, while Milan was convicted as the getaway driver, receiving a 10-year term. However, the legal saga took a stunning twist in April 2023. An appeals court overturned Milan's conviction, citing reasonable doubt and suggesting the original judgment may have been influenced by the high-profile nature of the case. He was acquitted and released, leaving Yulianov alone to serve his sentence. Yet, as the prison doors closed on the gunman, the larger question remained unanswered: who signed the checks? The Serafim brothers were merely the instruments of a higher power. To this day, the architect of the plot remains a ghost. The timeline of John's demise curiously overlapped with other violent episodes involving Australian underworld figures in Athens, including a car bombing attempt on associate Jay Malkoon, who narrowly escaped with his life. These incidents suggest a broader, perhaps global power struggle, but no definitive link has ever been proven. Today, the legacy of the Australian is one of unfulfilled ambition and cautionary silence. His father, Stelios, declared he would never return to Greece, the land that claimed his son. Victoria has retreated from the public eye to raise their two children, grappling with the revelation that the peaceful life she thought she had was built on a fault line. John Macris tried to outrun his history, constructing a facade of legitimacy in a paradise far from home. But in the end, the story serves as a stark reminder that in the world of organized crime, the past is never truly left behind. It is merely waiting for the right moment to catch up.